Let's get going. So those of you who are at home and have the packets that we were working on yesterday, go ahead and take that out. This was the new one, the extra one that I gave you guys. Let me see so this is the very first page of that. Let's go ahead and take that out. Along with a pencil, obviously. Sure, you probably have something ready to go anyways. Okay, so let's look back at this page in that packet. So this was the one that we were going to be using to graph our data depending on the spheres that we visited. All right. So most of you were just about done, or just about finished up with graphing this information here. All right. Now, the whole game essentially was random. So, is it possible to kind of have equal visits to each of the 4 or 5 spheres? Sure. And is it possible to kind of, like some of you kind of got stuck in a sphere for a while? That's also totally possible as well. So let's go ahead and answer the questions below the graph here. So assuming that you have this all filled in. If not, take a second and do that. It should be pretty easy. Like I said, I think most of you have that done. So number 1, you just answer this. Which sphere did you visit the most? Which sphere did you visit the least? So write down the name of the sphere that you visited the most first, and the one that you visited the least, write that down second. And if you were tied for the most or the least with any 2 spheres, just write them both. So in terms of number 2, what are some similarities that you experienced between the different spheres? So I have like paper copies of kind of like all the different stations that you were kind of at here. So one thing that always kind of popped up to me was that all of these involve you, like, a human. So all of these involve some sort of living object being involved with all of these spheres, really no matter what. At least most of them, you can see the words you, throughout a lot of those different stations. Okay. So you could say that involves something that you kind of see as far as some similarities there. With some of them, you end up having to stay, in that sphere. So that's maybe another similarity there. So let's again here. Slide this over here. Okay. So like I said, the number 2, you could write down something like most of the spheres involve a human interaction too. So it's kind of helpful to keep in mind for number 3. So 3 says looking at your data table. So not the graph that you made, but the table where you recorded your visits and your locations. Which interaction from column 2 represents an interaction between more than 3 spheres? So all of these that we looked at involved interactions with like 2 spheres for sure, because you were in one sphere and then you had to go to the next one. So those are, they hopefully you picked up on that it was involving 2 of them. But you can look at some of these different scenarios that you wrote down for as far as like what happened to you. So I'm talking about like this column. Okay. So I want you to look through this column here, and you'll see the 2 spheres, that are involved. So I had cryosphere and atmosphere just down here as an example. Look at this column here, and can you see any ones that might involve a third sphere? Even though it doesn't say that that sphere is involved, look at those different scenarios and see if you can pick out a third sphere that might be involved, right? And I'll kind of look for a couple up here as well. So take a look and see if you can find any that involve more than just those two spheres. All right. So, like I said, a lot of these, remember, involve you as a human, and you are a living thing that is, can easily interact with an environment as well. So, like if I look at this one right here, so I would like this hydrosphere example, and you may not have this one, but you can probably find one now that would represent three different spheres. So it says you are caught in a hurricane, go to the atmosphere. So the hurricane involves obviously the hydrosphere because you're going to, hurricanes produce lots of water and rain. The atmosphere is involved because that's where it forms. But then you, as a living person, as part of the biosphere, are also involved in that. All right. This one too, you are in an offshore fishing and hit an iceberg. So you're fishing. That's a living thing that you're impacting. You hit an iceberg, that's the cryosphere, and you're in water, which is where you're fishing at. So, like I said, there you should easily be able to find a couple examples where more than one sphere is involved. All right. So then what you'll do is you'll write that sphere. Whoops, sorry, moving too fast here. You'll write that interaction for number 3. And then you need to write the 3 spheres that are involved. Okay. So I'm going to do the hurricane one, and then I'm going to tell, which spheres were involved. Now, you cannot write this example unless you actually have that one written down. Okay. So it said, again, unless you happen to have that one that involved the hydrosphere, the atmosphere, and the biosphere, you can't necessarily use this one. You got to find a different one that involves all at least 3 spheres. Okay. So I wrote down again my example and then which spheres were involved: hydrosphere, atmosphere, and then me as the human as part of the biosphere. All right, so once you finish that, I'm going to have you do number 4 here. Okay. Now you're welcome to kind of look back at your examples from that column there to try to figure out one, or change it up a little bit. But I do want you to try to come up with your own. So own interaction that would affect 3 or more spheres. So you'll have to come up with one, and then make sure that you list down the spheres that are involved. So you're going to just put this in parentheses because you're not, this is the answer, but this is how to get the answer, what I'm expecting here. So give your own example. Again, you can use your page for ideas. Okay, so give example and list the spheres involved. Okay. So again, you can use that column 2 for inspiration, but I really do not want you to involve or use it. Sorry, not involved, but I really don't want you to use the same exact ones as any of those. So I'll give you 2 minutes here to work on number 4. No. NICO. All right, and then you're welcome to go on to number 5 here too. So hopefully you see the impact that these spheres can have on each other. I want you to think what would happen, predict what would happen to the interaction of the spheres if you were to take away an entire sphere. Okay, so for this one, what I would like you to do is I want you to pick a sphere. Again, I'm going to give the directions sort of in here in parentheses, so you're not going to be writing this, but pick a sphere to remove and how it will affect the others. Okay. So you're going to, pick one of the 5 spheres. Again, we've only kind of talked about 4, but cryosphere we've split up from the hydrosphere. But if you take away one of them, how does that impact some of the other ones? I don't necessarily need an impact for like each of the other exact ones, but at least how it impacts another sphere, at least one other sphere. So if you take out the hydrosphere, what impact does that have on the atmosphere? Or what impact would that have on the geosphere? So at least one, take out one, what impact does that have on at least one other sphere? So I'll give you another minute here to come up with an answer for that. So you really just need to pick one sphere, and then how would removing that impact the others? Or other, just at least one is fine. All right. So we're going to go on to the back page of your packet here. This is sort of just a little uh, mini quiz questions here, but we'll just answer them together. So number one says, in the picture below, a slow-moving mass of ice has gradually weathered and eroded away rock in a mountain valley. The landscape of the rock has greatly changed. So that's what glaciers do, is they tear through rock and break it apart. So it says, which sphere was affected in the transformation, according to the information up here? Geosphere, because the cryosphere scraped rock away as it slowly moved. Could be. Geosphere, because the hydrosphere scraped rock away as it slowly moved. No, because it's not the hydrosphere that is breaking up the rock. In this case, I mean, we're assuming that we have two different spheres there. Biosphere, because the hydrosphere flooded the valley, eliminating trees and plants. Doesn't say that it did. And biosphere, because the cryosphere flooded the valley, eliminating trees and plants. Again, the cryosphere can't flood because it's ice. So our best answer for this one has got to become okay. So a glacier moving down a hill is greatly going to impact the geosphere as it rips away rock, carves out valleys. It also is capable of moving large pieces of rock boulder and small pieces of sediment away from each other. Question 2, in 1815, a volcano erupted, spewing billions of tons of ash into the sky. This ash cloud caused global annual temperatures to drop below normal, causing a year without a summer in 1816. This is a true story. This happened, and it caused the year without a summer happened because it got very cold. Never really had, and this is worldwide. So temperatures did not get very high during that year. So which sphere did this ash cloud affect to cause these changes? So the ash cloud, what sphere did it affect? The hydrosphere, because water and the ash absorb the sun's radiation. That does not work. Hydrosphere, because the ice and the ash cause the sun's radiation to reflect off. Wouldn't probably say so. Atmosphere, because the ash allowed more radiation than normal to reach the surface. Well, if we had more radiation, then we would have warmer temperatures. And the year without a summer tells me the temps were cooler. So I wouldn't do that one either. Atmosphere, because the ash blocked more radiation than normal, not allowing it to reach the surface. That would be the best bet. Okay. So again, you're talking about the geosphere greatly impacting the atmosphere. Geosphere being the volcano. Which of the following situations of interactions involve all 5 of Earth's spheres? So this is a little tricky because you got to find something that involves all 5 spheres. So letter A, a polar bear floats on an iceberg. So I definitely have biosphere because I have a polar bear. I definitely have the cryosphere because I have the ice there. I have hydrosphere because it's how, icebergs float on water. I don't really see anything as far as atmosphere, but, I guess it maybe is some breathing air or something similar to that here. But what we're really missing in this one is the geosphere. It talks nothing about land in this one. Okay. So probably not A. Let's take a look at the others. An alligator on the lake shore eats a bird. So alligator, I have B again. Lake gives me water. Again, I can probably assume that since they're big, but they have places in the atmosphere. But that's about it. Again, shore, maybe we can make a case for the geosphere because they're probably on the beach. But I don't have anything that involves cryosphere. Nothing involves, any sort of ice here. So probably won't work there. Next one, a farmer in the rainforest growing coffee beans. So farmer, obviously a biosphere. Rainforest, I think that usually involves some sort of hydrosphere. Even the soil, all that kind of stuff that can make a case for geosphere and for atmosphere. But again, I don't have a cryosphere involved. So let's take a look at D. A glacier flows over land, taking rocks and trees with it as it melts. This one involves a glacier, which is cryo. Moving over land, which is geo, taking trees with it, that's bio, and as it melts, that gives me hydro. And again, I can assume the atmosphere is part of that. So D would be your best bet there. Next one, which spheres are interacting if a lengthy and severe drought affects Florida? So which spheres are interacting if a lengthy and severe drought affects Florida? Cryosphere is eliminated, which affects the biosphere. Cryosphere is the ice. Ice in Florida don't really interact with each other. So it's probably not A or B. Hydrosphere is eliminated, which affects the biosphere. Hydrosphere is eliminated, which affects the geosphere. So hydrosphere being eliminated, that is what is happening. A severe drought means that there's no water. So it definitely is one of these two, which affects the biosphere. That's probably going to be the biggest effect. Now, it will affect the geosphere as well, because your lake beds will dry up, your stream beds will dry up, and things like that. But that's not going to have nearly as big of an impact as the biosphere would. Last one, majority of earthquakes occur at transform boundaries. That's a location where the plates are moving past each other. Which sphere is responsible for a sudden jump of Earth's crust? So Earth's crust, that tells me that that's probably the geosphere. So the geosphere, because the rock is sliding past each other, that looks good. Biosphere, because humans find mountains causing the rock to crack, that's not what causes earthquakes. The hydrosphere does not cause earthquakes, and the cryosphere does not cause earthquakes. So it's definitely going to 8. All right. So I'm going to stop us there for today. And when we come back on Tuesday, we'll finish up this chart right up here. I'll have this recorded. If you missed anything, you can go back and watch it, and I'll have it up in Schoology. So you guys have a good day. Otherwise, I'll see you on Tuesday.
I don't get this. So it's a reading, and it says the star winked at me. What is that?